Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Mortgage Coach Tuesday interview. I am always pumped for this, but I'm especially pumped because Deborah, you're so pumped about this topic in this call, right?
It's my lady crush. I told you this, Dave. I have a lady crush on Kristin.
Yeah, no,
Am I allowed to reveal that?
Yeah, reveal it. Why do you have a lady crush, by the way?
Because I'm so passionate about financial literacy and I love Kristin's just vibe and energy and the fact that she empowers women and just really puts a lot of time and research into bridging that gap. And I mean, really puts a lot of time and energy in looking at true data, which is what allows me with running a social media marketing company. I mean, everything we do, I want it to be valuable and to help spread financial literacy. But if you don't have a strategy or true intentions of what people actually need and want and the delivery of how they want it, then you're just creating content that, you may think is good, but it's not real for what people need. And so Kristin has made me, all of the talks I've given, I was just thinking even in the last couple of weeks, people literally think I'm a genius when I just study the content and research that Kristin has provided. So thank you, Kristin, for making me look like a rock star.
Well, you cannot know how happy that makes me to be able to put some of the research in action and hear you excited about bridging that gap. And everyone on this call is very passionate about that. So I'm really happy to be here.
Right on. So guys, Kristin also makes me look a lot smarter than I am. Her and I don't know if this was our first collaboration, Kristin. I think we might have created some articles before, but guys, this is in 2019, February. And we started really talking about what is the digital shift era. I am really proud of the content. Like when you go back and you read this, like Kristin, we nailed it. A lot of good content that still is valuable today as it was then. Also, we did a follow-up, and we'll put links down below to that, the post-COVID era. So Kristin, we probably even need to update that one. I was reading that a little bit before our call today, and I'm like, there's more to talk about. And I also think we really need to bring in not just the digital era that we're in, but the financial literacy crisis that we're in, and the fact that, guys, we have the tools to solve that. And the mortgage industry has the tools to solve that. So, Kristin, you, when I invited you to do this topic, you were very passionate about inviting Montale. Why don't you put a little color around that?
Yeah, so I'm so happy Montale could join us. Montale, thank you so much for joining. I've worked with Montale a lot in the past, just on different passion projects, and he's definitely very passionate about bridging the gap. Montale, I think your title is Director of Diversity Lending and Strategic Partnerships. Is that right?
That's the first person that's gotten it right, Kristin. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, great! Well, I love the title. So, do you want to share a little bit about what that means, and then I'll pull you in after we frame up the discussion a little bit. But I want you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you guys for having me on, man. I am extremely passionate about this topic. And Kristin, I know we've had a chance to be on panels together and do some stuff together. And I echo Deborah in regards to everything that you do. So thank you for putting and placing data around important topics. But as the Director of Diversity Lending and Strategic Partnerships, what I'm tasked with, what I'm passionate about is bringing diversity and opportunity and equity to homeownership in communities that get overlooked, underserved. And gosh, being able to and underneath that, obviously, it comes with the education, it comes with recruiting and retaining our loan officers. And one piece I think a lot of people also miss is educating our loan officers, right? And then having strategic, important partnerships across the country that can help bring all of that ecosystem together, whether it being nonprofits. I think a big piece of this, churches, the church community. We're doing a lot of partnerships there. And in our school systems. And for those that don't know, Movement has our own schools, our Charter One schools that we're rolling out across the country, 100 of them. And so all of that is like, we're just trying to help Black, brown communities, minorities have the opportunity of homeownership, educate of why it's important. And it's a huge passion of mine, and I wake up every day excited about it.
Well, it is awesome to have you. I love one thing I loved everything you said, but we talked about how we need to really help loan officers become more financially literate. And we did a call 10 days ago with Todd Bellinger, and it was all about managing your money for loan officers. So it was a whole call on that. So we'll put a link down below to that. Todd, Mr. Win by Noon, Todd Bookspan, anything you want to say or ask before we get into the meat of the conversation here?
You know, it's certainly hard to follow Deborah's introduction. I don't know that I can top that, but I'm obviously a big fan of Kristin as well. You know, I think the bottom line is you just nailed it, Dave. I mean, this is the conversation we need to have, right? Montale, you just said it. You're about educating loan officers and connecting to the community, and that's what we try to do here every Tuesday and Friday morning in our community. So I've already got my notes rolling, and I'm going to be a passenger alongside of the rest of you, and look forward to hopefully asking some good questions and adding some value as we go through the rest of the call.
All right, well, let's rock it out. We have an executive with movement on the first half of this call. Kristin Messerli is the Vice President of Strategy at Experience.com, the leader in mortgage when it comes to reputation management. We've got an incredible integration with their platform. So for all you loan officers that have Mortgage Coach and Experience.com, you're able to deliver a better experience and really communicate your value in a unique way. So Kristin, you're passionate about this topic. You know, when you and I were talking last time we were speaking somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but we were just, you know, we were going back and forth on the financial literacy crisis, how the mortgage coach or the mortgage industry can help solve to that. So why don't you kick off the dialogue and let's have a mastermind around it.
Awesome. I'm going to share a few slides that have some data in here, and I just want to, frame it up a little bit, and then we can dive into conversation and hear more about what movement and Montale has been doing to bridge this gap as well. First of all, I did write up something in Rob Chrisman, and I pulled a few of the stats that I had there. But there's just so much research that talks about the financial strain and the gap in financial literacy in the US. A couple of notes on that. By the end of last year, over 1 in 5 adult renters with children were still not caught up on their rent. So obviously the pandemic has had an impact. Nearly half of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency without going into debt. And there's a ton of research and data about how money impacts every aspect of our lives. So I think that while we, talk about finances in this little bubble, we need to acknowledge that this is what, what impacts our health, our relationships, every aspect of our lives. So really happy to be a part of something that is bringing that kind of awareness, because it and working towards bridging that gap, because it impacts every part of us. Financial literacy does disproportionately impact diverse markets, and we're seeing a bigger gap in young and next gen segments as well, more than we've seen in previous generations. So I want to, and this is definitely leading into talking or hearing a little bit more from Montale, but I want to share a few stats from the Next Gen Homebuyer Report from 2020 and 2021 that really goes to speak to this. So a few of those that talk about this gap: 1 in 4 of next gen homebuyers, these are people between the ages of 22 to 37 who either were about to buy a home or recently bought a home. 1 in 4 said that their biggest challenge was a lack of understanding. So this is just about home ownership, but it shows this very significant gap. There was also a lack of confidence. 1 in 5 said they were not confident in any step of the home buying process. And again, these are people that are already in the market. So people have already decided, I'm going to make that leap. And there's a whole ton of people that don't feel confident enough to even step into the home buying market. And then there's uncertainty, rightfully so. I mean, 22% are concerned that their home will not be a good investment. And in today's market, this goes to, I've talked, I think, on this coaching call in the past about how important the rent versus own analysis was for me, the total cost analysis was for me, and when I was going through this process a year ago. But I just really struggled with, and I've pretty much grown up in this industry. I've been licensed as a loan officer before. Like, I have a lot of the education, but there's still an emotional component and a lot of uncertainty in the market that makes it very difficult for us to, I think, move forward. And we know, again, this prevents a lot of people from building wealth.
Hey,
and then when it came,
Kristin, real quick, because you had the experience of where you knew a lot of, you know, the data and rent versus own. You knew it at a high level. You knew it from news articles, but how big of a difference was it when it was actually personalized and localized? You know, like where you know, you were in a 2 to 3 month period where like I'm debating, am I going to keep renting? I'm going to own. And when you were able to put your assumptions, how much of a multiplier was it in terms of a learning experience?
Yeah, I mean, I was really convinced it wasn't a good idea for me to buy. And I talked to Dave, I talked to many people in the industry that kept saying, you really need to look at this, you know, and I couldn't, I even had done a rent versus own analysis on my own. And I wasn't convinced until I saw the rent versus own through Mortgage Coach. And it really laid it out for me in a way that allowed me to, I couldn't have my emotions involved. And I'm doing a lot more speaking on the kind of the psychology of money, because I think it's so important that we try to work on removing some of our emotions and anxieties around money outside of the logical side, because that's what was overpowering for me. And when I saw it personalized for myself, like this is my personal situation, this is how, you know, if I invested this much in the stock market, if the market did this, I could see those different dynamics. And then I knew this was the right decision for me. So it removed a lot of the anxiety and uncertainty by going through that.
So
Kristin, can I ask? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I just want to tie a bow around this, and then we can mastermind around it. But I just want to really push loan officers and professionals that, you know, when you put the content in a slide, when you put the content in social media, like that's one level of awareness and education. But until you've really wrapped a family's, your goals, your assumptions in the market you're in, they don't know it. You know, like if Kristin would have just paid attention to that data, kind of her little homemade analysis, she'd still be renting. And you know, that was 2 years ago. And it just, until you've done a rent versus own for a family, you've not created complete clarity for a family. And the challenge there too, one, some families won't make the purchase decision for it, but most families won't pay the winning offer. So if you want to win in this, you know, bidding wars market, you gotta put it together for every family. Anyways, Deborah, to you.
Well, the first thing that came to mind when you just said that, Dave, is if you're doing annual asset reviews, to call a client that is like Kristin, who was so nervous in making the decision, and you can go back and say, hey, I bet you thought this was a good decision now that you're seeing how homes have appreciated. But my question to you is, there's a lot of people who think they do maybe the rent versus own analysis. What was it about? Like, was it seeing the cost over time that really got you like hook, line, and sinker that made it clear for you?
It was actually, because then I was able to see at 2 years, this made sense for me, and or a very clear, you know, sense. And I think that being able to see that over time, I could imagine myself in 2 years still wanting to be in that place. And that's what I felt a lot of anxiety around, like, well, what if I, you know, wanted to move in a few years, or I don't know. But I do think it was facing the facts, but having that personalization. And I was going to bring this up later, but there's a lot of distrust in the market. And so we expect that people that are trying to sell mortgages are going to tell us it's a good idea to get a mortgage. You know, I mean, so I still, even though I trust and love so many people in this industry, I was still like, yeah, of course you'd say that, you know, of course you'd say it's a good idea for me to buy. And I think that, and you know, our data from last year showed that 2 in 3 home buyers, next gen home buyers, said that they didn't think lenders were trustworthy or reliable. And so when you think about, and we asked, you know, what would have made your experience better? One of the top responses was personalization and transparency. And so, you know, again, going back to my experience, that was really the solution for me, was to have that personalization.
So reminder, everyone, we only have Montale for 15 more minutes. So let's get him into the conversation.
Yes.
Kristin,
okay,
do you mind if I just,
yeah.
do you mind if I jump
ahead.
in just really quick on that? Because I know I heard your personal story before. You and I talked about that. And there, like you mentioned, right, there's a lot of mistrust and angst and anxiety around the overall experience just alone. But then once you, and you maybe touched on this a little later, so sorry if I jumped the gun a little bit, but as you get into the minority communities, Black and brown communities, there's a lot of pent up, long-standing mistrust with financial institutions based off of a lot of generational trauma, right? Like a lot of generational trauma that a lot of folks have personally seen families, their families, different families have homes taken away from them, in 2008. And then with the pandemic, a lot of Black and brown families are typically, more affected during those time periods. So there is a big mistrust aspect. Get me back.
Yeah, we hear you. Were we having a hard time hearing Montale, or was that me?
Was that me? Oh no. Okay, you're cutting in and out, but you're talking about
sorry.
I think we got you back.
You're good. Yeah, but you were touching on such an important topic, and I do think, I mean, even you think about the generational trauma that has occurred, like you said, in through redlining and many other aspects here, but I think that, again, we think in silos a lot of times, and we think about, what our personal experience is, and we have to think about what the communities we're serving and what their experience is, not just today, but all of the things that we're bringing to the table. And I think, when I talk about the next gen homebuyer segment, I talk about how we entered adulthood during or right after the financial crisis. And of course, that has a huge impact on how we're viewing the financial industry and housing industry. And so, Montale, anyway, you can continue speaking to that topic.
Yeah, no, I think it's very important. One piece you touched on is like us meeting diverse marketplaces where they are, right? And a big piece of what we're trying to do at Movement is meet the communities that we're serving exactly where they are, through our loan officers, but from an educational perspective, what we rolled out is our Grab the Key initiative. If you guys get a chance, go, for the folks on the call today listening, go to grabthekey.com, take a look at what it looks like. We put together powerful video to bring awareness to the experience in the Black community from a history perspective, all the way back to, slavery, Jim Crow, to Dr. Martin Luther King, pretty much his life work around equality and fair housing, and then dying and the Fair Housing Act being passed. And then what it looks like today for lenders that are reaching out, trying to help people of color get into homes. And so Grab the Key was based off of that, is saying, hey, we want to reach out to the communities, meet people where they are, bring education first from an empowerment perspective, because there is a dignity aspect of it, right? That a lot of times we overlook, but we want to bring dignity, education, and then as you come through and experience Grab the Key, once you come out on the other side of that, the understanding that, hey, we want to hold your hand and walk through the experience. It's already tough enough. It's already hard enough for each and every person out there. But understanding the trauma in the Black communities of what has happened, and then saying, hey, you might not be in a place right now that you can own a home, but we want to walk with you to educate you along the way. And then once you are ready, we want to help you. You might be in a place where your credit may not be exactly where you want it. We want to help you get it there. And then from there, we want to help you with those next steps. And I think there's so many people in so many different swim lanes as we think about on their homeownership journey, from an education perspective, from a financial perspective, that we have to almost have customized educational approaches for different demographics and experiences. So that's a little bit, Kristin, is what we're trying to accomplish, and understanding the big piece of, like, we got to get in the communities. We got to go to the churches. We got to go to the barbershops. I actually had, on our last Grab the Key series, we had a barber come on who's now running for mayor of Charlotte, by the way, a phenomenal individual. But he came on and he almost turned the entire, Grab the Key experience into church, because he was touching on such important pieces of generational curses, in the Black community, educating around it. And it touched so many people's hearts to understand that. And a lot of people in our community, where do they go? They go to the churches when they have issues. They're going to barbershops. They're going to community organizations. And so for us, that's a huge part of it, is meeting people where they are and trying to provide a customized education experience.
So good. Yeah, I think it's really important that we incorporate people that these communities trust and that we meet them where they are. So I'll talk later about some of the influencers or online influencers that are doing this in financial literacy to reach the next gen segment. And we think about this from the digital age. We can't be continuing to do things the way that we have before. We need to incorporate people that each of these segments trust and again, go where the people are already. So Montale, can you share a little bit about what you guys are doing in schools as well?
Yeah, for our schools, guys, for those that don't know, we have a plan in the next 10 years to have 100 schools across the country. And as we roll those schools out, it's very, very important, not only for our teachers that are helping, to educate the future generation, but also to help the families, right? To have wraparound services from an education perspective, wraparound services for just different parts of life to continue to thrive. A big piece of that is the financial literacy and financial empowerment, so that we can not only educate the next generation, but also the families and the teachers. And, we most recently had one here in Charlotte, and it was 70%. We had 100 of our facility staff, and teachers in the building, and 72 folks raised their hand to say, hey, I want to own a home within the next year, right? And in understanding and knowing that there's so many people out there in these communities that want to, they just need to have the trust, to have somebody that can help them with those next steps of educating and leading the way. And so a lot of that, as we roll out, we're going to have those wraparound services within our schools. And a lot of our schools are being rolled out in areas that in MSAs that are the upward mobility is some of the worst in the country, right? And for Charlotte alone, Charlotte and Atlanta specifically, you have around a 4 to 6% chance of making it out of the zip code that you're born in. And we want to change that. We want to change that and understand that we can change it through education and financial literacy and empowerment to change the next generation.
I love that. And it's, oh, go ahead, Dave. I thought you were
I was saying, I love that. And I really want to push folks. I did an interview with one of your loan officers, Mike Garrett, and I actually interviewed him twice. One 4 months ago. It's called The Captain of the Wealth Team with Mike Garrett. We'll put a link down below to that. But he's partnering with CPAs, financial planners, realtors, and going out to high schools, I think monthly. He's doing regular and consistent outreach. And, while clearly what Movement's doing, the website they've put together, the mission, the way they've empowered folks, it really is great leadership for all of us. But I want every loan officer who's watching this to know that you can take action on your own. You can, build these relationships in your community. You can position yourself beyond what a loan officer is. I mean, you're making dreams come true. People don't get loans because they want loans. They get loans because they want homes. And so you have the keys to that. Montale, are you pretty familiar with what Mike is doing, and any thoughts on that?
Absolutely, Dave. And I want to make one little small plug, as well as make a comment around. I see you have the No Borrower Left Behind shirt. And I jumped on they have a podcast series as well. And I jumped on there with Sales Boomerang. And I talked about just doing the next best thing, right? Just doing one thing, taking that next step on that podcast. And that's what Mike Garrett has done. Right. He understands that this is a huge opportunity and issue, across the country. And he's doing that next best thing of getting together with industry partners and bringing education to schools, in his communities. And man, how many other loan officers that are on this call today can do the exact same thing? Just taking that small little step of getting out in your community at the local high schools, whatever it is, colleges as well, to provide that education can change the lives of those individuals and the next generation. And Mike, he's doing great work. He's doing great work. I love everything he's doing. And I hope and pray, and I know more loan officers are going to be doing the exact same thing across the country.
And guys, we would love to have you representing the movement of Mortgage Coach and Sales Boomerang, No Borrower Left Behind. There's a lot of families that qualify for loans that don't realize that they qualify for loans. That if they took their assumptions, they took what their means are, they could be into homeownership and they don't know it. And by the way, you can bring that to their kids in high schools. And while you're giving back to the next generation, guys, you're going to get loans. You know, parents like that when their kids are getting financial literacy.
I want to give a shout out to Mike has a phenomenal social media company backing him on his content post there. Wonder who it is.
That's right.
I love it. I love it.
He's a
Small
mutual
plug.
client. Yeah, no, it's a great plug.
Yeah.
Todd, anything
Little.
you want to weigh in on this conversation before we lose Montale?
No, I just love what you're doing. I went over to your grabthekey.com. So how can we support you more, Montale, in our community?
Man, I think the best way that you can support kind of what my mission is and the mission of that movement, man, is just doing that the next best thing you can do to help educate communities that we are all in and serving in, right? If it is something like what Mike's doing and going out to the local communities, bringing awareness to the education, which, you know, you guys are already doing a phenomenal job of, that next best thing of educating as best we can will help the next generation, the minority communities that we are trying to reach and serve, and just doing our best to meet them where they are, which, you know, we've touched a lot on today. I think would be huge. So, and how you can best support. But I know I got to jump off here. I just wanted to tell my personal story around homeownership. And hopefully this can touch, whether it's a loan officer or, you know, whoever sees, you know, this call today. You know, my experience of, you know, I started off in the industry in the subprime arena for an organization. And I was on the front lines of seeing people who had their homes taken away from them. That majority of the times they look like myself. And as I was educated more and more around subprime and, you know, what we're doing in the mortgage industry, you know, I remember my last day like it was yesterday. I did a 28% car loan, 160% loan to value, terrible loan. My sales manager told me I had to sell it. I sold it. The person took it. I quit that day. I fast forward to working in the advisory role, Series 766. Past that, helping people, you know, that had money already make more money and transitioning to an opportunity to own my own home while being at TD Ameritrade. And at the time I was making six figures. And luckily I had a wife that was like, hey, we're going to get a home. Because my experience, I never seen anybody in my family that owned homes. And I remember going out and every single house that we looked at, I was like, no, we can't afford it. We shouldn't do it. That whole fearful experience, Kristin, that you had. And the entire time I was a loan officer, an advisor. In my mind, I was afraid of being turned down. I was afraid of having the home taken away from me. I was afraid and fearful. And that was my entire mindset of approaching it. And I was a loan officer and an advisor. So, and for people out there that you may be helping diverse communities, multicultural communities, understand that there is a huge fear factor out there in the communities that you are serving, and just help people get over that fear and help them believe that they can own a home. That's a big piece of what we want to accomplish at Movement, is helping people understand and believe that home ownership is right for them and that it will change their lives.
Montale, it was a gift to have you on today's call. We really appreciate it. And Chris, anything else you want to say before we lose them?
No, thank you so much, Montale, for joining us and for sharing your very inspiring story and work that you're doing. Again, we really appreciate you being here.
Thank each and every one of you guys. You're doing fantastic work. Pleasure to be on.
All right, take care.
See ya.
All right, guys. So we got another 30 minutes to unpack this, to, share strategies. I want to make sure everyone gets like tactical takeaways. Deborah, any questions you want to ask or any directions you want to take this with Kristin before Kristin gets back into her slides?
Well, I'm curious on your 2021 report, how does it differ from 2020 on the social platforms specifically, especially with, TikTok on the rise? And did you see a difference from just 1 year of where you can reach more people with financial literacy, especially in that demographic group?
Yeah, that was really interesting. We saw a huge uptick in YouTube as the place that people are going for financial literacy content or personal finance content. And I think that I'd be really curious to know, because we did that last survey, I think it was in September. I'd be curious where it's at now, because for TikTok, because we saw 12% of people went to TikTok for personal finance education. And at that time, I thought, who is going to TikTok for this, And now I honestly very recently discovered a huge amount of personal finance information on TikTok, and I think it's just exploding. And so I'd be really curious where we are today, and I definitely plan to do another report. But I think that that was an interesting difference. 74% of people said that they went to YouTube for personal finance information in their 2021 report.
That will be interesting.
Was there any
to see how
was there any kind of
evolved.
pattern of what they were wanting specifically within? Like, was it budgeting, saving, investing? Like, what would be those hot buttons for people listening if they were to create content that would probably catch wind the quickest?
That's a good question. And I don't think we asked that specifically. So if there's anything like that, I would actually love your input and anyone on this call input on what you'd like to see in the next report, and for data just coming from the Next Gen Homebuyer segment, because I'm actively putting together those questions right now. In our 2020 report, we asked questions of which areas of the home buying process did they have the most questions about. And it honestly wasn't that interesting, because everyone had questions about every single part of it. And so just like no one knows anything. So but yeah, I think that I've done a lot of interviews in addition to the surveys done, and most people are asking the question of when is the right time to buy when it comes to home ownership. So I think, in personal investing, like what type of investing they should be doing. I just interviewed an influencer, a YouTube influencer named Rose Hahn on Next Mortgage News. She was my recent interview on the Pivotal Moments kind of section, and it was really interesting. So she has a whole YouTube channel she's just passionate about personal finance, and I can't remember what her following is, but it's enormous. And I would encourage you to watch, or listeners to watch that interview, because that shares some really interesting insights.
By the way, guys, check out all of Kristin's Pivotal Moments. Definitely a great podcast that people can get it on all podcast platforms, Kristin, or are there some specific ones better than others?
Oh, actually, it's just, I keep calling it a podcast, and that's because I plan to put it out on all those channels, but it's just on Next Mortgage News and on YouTube. So, but go to Next YouTube. Mortgage News. Yeah, either one works great.
Okay, we'll put a couple links down below for that.
What was her name, Kristin? I missed it.
What's that?
What was that?
What was her name, the lady that you interviewed that you recommended?
Rose Hahn, Hahn. So, but if you go to her YouTube channel, is Investing with Rose. So
all right, so I'm going to check out your interview with her.
We'll get a link down below. So, Kristin, anything else as we set the topics and table? Any other things you want to make sure we get through on your slides?
Yeah, I'd love to share. There were a few slides that we didn't get to that I wanted to. That's not where I just moved over to his. So that I wanted to just share ahead of time. So one, there's a lot of myths, and definitely the education differs by demographic. Unsurprisingly, in Black and Asian and Latino segments, education around, or these myths were more common around having 20% or having a traditional job required to get a mortgage. So again, I would just want to bridge or make that connection that while this is absolutely a passion for, I'm sure, everyone in the mortgage coach community to bridge the gap in financial literacy, it's also a path to increasing your business, and so the more that we can bridge this gap and improve financial literacy, the better, that more you can grow your business. And I think there was a comment that Montale or someone made that was that the more that we are able to, just make that connection, I think that people are really looking for that type of education, and a lot of people are not aware that they could qualify for a mortgage right now. So I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed in the Next Gen segment who have said that when they started the process, it was just because someone said they would help them make a plan, or they didn't think that they could buy at that time and realize they could qualify. So I really try to encourage everybody to have say you make a home ownership plan for everyone, so that if they want to buy a home in the next 5 years, they should talk to you and you'll help them just map it out a little bit, because I would bet that a lot of them could buy a home today. And I think that there's just a big myth around that. The other thing I wanted to mention is the gender gap. There's also a huge gap, and a lot of research McKinsey has done as well on the investment gap. In our research, we found that men were over 3 times more likely to be investing than women, which really surprised me, because again, this is just the Next Gen segment in particular. But one of the things, and we controlled for whether they had children, their income, socioeconomic status, all of that. And the only thing that was statistically significant was whether they learned growing up about how to make a financial plan. And men were 85% more likely than women to have had that experience growing up. So I just say that to, again, emphasize that point of what education brings to the table, and also what we're all bringing to the table in terms of our experiences. And to Montale's point, we are all bringing our own baggage, our own generational trauma, our own experiences from childhood that are impacting our financial planning today. And I think it's really important that we tap into that as professionals. So I will pause there so we can discuss, but I have more thoughts on how we shift into kind of the digital age of this as well.
Well, I'm all about scripting. So I just love the fact that you talked about the scripting of, as a loan officer, you should all be coming alongside of a prospective buyer and say, hey, let me help you make a plan. So I love that. It lowers the bar of intimidation, because I feel like people are scared to talk to loan officers. And if you just say, hey, may not be the right time, but let's create a plan together, I think that is really powerful.
Yeah, totally.
So Deborah, I know you help, and one of the things I love about how you help people on social media is by being that, that financial literacy inspiration, how-tos. Anything you want to call out, or any loan officers that you think everyone should follow, or some examples?
Yes, I would say everyone needs to follow the Mortgage Nerd. May have a biased interest there. She's my twin. But, Dan Keller also recently created a phenomenal presentation. Keith Collins is another one. I laugh because I've been putting the squeeze on Jeremy Forsey, where he finally did a one-to-many presentation of just the truth around rates in the recession. And he recorded a video using his webcam. He went on, posted it on social media, and he had, I think, like 500 subscribers go to his YouTube channel just in like the first hour. So those would be some of the people, and I'll put some examples in the chat of different links of things that we've done with just how to save, how to budget. If you've ever thought about buying a home, or if you do ever want to buy a home, what do you need to be thinking about today? What is the real cost of renting over time? I mean, anything we can possibly create that helps educate and bridge that gap around assets, savings, investing, giving. Those, ironically, are also the content threads that get the most views and most engagement, because it's revealing that people don't know this stuff. Now, when you put the TCA on top of it, which is why I was asking you, Kristin, there's a lot of loan officers that will show just your side by side of here's different loan options, but they don't go over the loan strategy. And to your point with how many people out there could actually qualify and they just don't know, is why it's even more important to maybe get that extra lift to get them to take action, is going to be showing them over time. So if you're not doing that, that today and you're not putting that out on social to at least give the awareness where someone will feel safe and comfortable enough to maybe DM you or send you a message saying, hey, I'd really be curious if you look at my specific situation, to your point, Dave, with making it very personal and customized. You have to show people the facts and the numbers. And that's not just with first-time home buyers. I mean, look at Drake with Neo, who transformed a doctor's life in a opportunity that, started with a trigger from sales Boomerang that he was going to get a rate and term refinance through a local bank. And then because he went to a true strategist that understood the money game. And so if you're a loan officer who doesn't understand the money game, which I've had discovery calls with some of you, you have got to commit to going to mortgagecoach.com, go to resources. They have daily trainings now to teach you some of the financial strategies of how to then position the TCAs so that you are bridging that gap. Because too many of you have told me, I just don't even know where I would start or how I would create that as a lesson. Thankfully, Mortgage Coach has removed that excuse, to be perfectly honest, because they have trainings and Q&As that you can learn from the best and just duplicate it, rip off and duplicate. I mean, we do that with a lot of our social media posts. I took Jeremy's buying, I think it was in 2000 at the start of the year, now and then later. Now the loan amounts may not be the same depending on where your area is, but I don't know how else you can really educate people to make great financial decisions unless you're also showing them the cost over time. So I'll put several examples in this thread, as well as on Facebook and on your YouTube channel, so people can see just different types of content that can be created to bring engagement. It just starts the conversation. And that's what I like most, is you've got to just start the conversation, because most people they don't know they can qualify and they're scared. And if you're renting, then I'm sure you've at least thought at some time, it may be 20 years from now, you've thought about buying. So let's take a look. What does that look like? Do you even know what qualifiers you need to have? So that's what I love with executing on socials. You're just trying to create the conversation and bring awareness.
So let's
And
do. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
Kristen. No, you
Well,
go
I
ahead.
was just going to bring up that one thing that you and I have talked a lot about, and you talk a lot about, Dave, of just managing beyond the transaction. And, I think one thing that we had quoted in one of our articles was that loan officers lose 70% of their past business. And especially as we think about moving into the purchase market and the shifts in the market today, I think so many people their only connection, even as homeowners, to wealth management in general is probably their loan officer, but they think of them as just a means to the end. And if you're able to help them manage their wealth over time and leverage tools like HomeBot and House Happy and things like that, I think there's a lot of, and obviously Mortgage Coach, but be able to, I think there's just so much more growth that can happen just through past business in and of itself.
And those are the type of stories, Kristen, that I really love for loan officers to be intentional about, of showing on social, because I think word of mouth referral is always going to be, the ultimate trump card. But now the social proof and social currency of, people aren't trusting. And so, yes, you could say I help people build wealth through real estate, but how does your social prove that? Show me the client that you did an annual asset review, or maybe it was the sixth loan that you've done together, that maybe they took the higher interest rate, as ludicrous as that sounds, because they were able to get a net savings based off other higher interest debt that they were paying on. That those are the types of stories that I want everyone listening to really think about, in the evidence that you can create on social to prove your value and your mission statement and what you say you do for people. And if you say you're the lender for life, then I want to see proof of that in your social feed and your storytelling.
So what I'd love to do in this next 15 minutes, and if anybody has something you want to make sure you share, feel free. But I would love for everyone watching the video, tuning into this, to get literally a checklist of what does it mean to be a financial literacy advocate, someone who's making change, a mortgage coach. And I want to have two checklists. One, I want to have a checklist of we're in the digital age shift. So what are the platforms? And we know YouTube sounds like, Kristen, from your standpoint, that's going to be the number one platform to create financial literacy content. And it sounds like TikTok is trending rapidly. So let's go back with both of you on channels, and then let's wrap up with, hey, let's create a list of the micro lessons that people should create. So let's riff on that. So Kristin, first, why don't you go with the channels, that people need to be using specifically on financial literacy training?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, YouTube, actually, I'll share my screen real quick just to show some data on this. So this was the, let's see, this was, yeah. So YouTube just enormously high when it comes to where people go for personal
Could you
finance.
put that into full screen mode real quick? Just
Yeah.
make it a little easier for everyone to see. And then remember, guys, she's going to give us these, well, you're going to give us these slides, right? We can share.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I think that YouTube, but you also have to think about, and Deborah can definitely speak to this, of what kind of content you're sharing on each platform. YouTube is where people are going for longer form content. TikTok, for instance, is a totally different kind of content. You're not getting into deep conversations on TikTok. You're just sharing short little things. And I think I have an example here. This is one of the influencers that I interviewed recently. She has over 300,000 followers. She only talks about mortgages, but they're very, very short things. And she's dispelling some myths that are related to her, segments that she focuses on. And so anyway, I just want to think about that. The other thing I wanted to mention is, and this is not social media necessarily, but just that everyone goes to Google first when they're researching anything. And so you do want to make sure that you have your reviews and what comes up when someone Googles your name. So I think that everyone is going to validate their information when they're choosing to work with somebody. And of course, any kind of content you can share is going to show up when someone is Googling that information as well. I'll go back to this.
Deborah, anything you want to add to this? Any edits you want to make? Any comments?
Well, when I was thinking of the checklist, one, you have to be financially literate to be able to spread financial literacy. So that makes a very easy opportunity that if you're going to commit to creating one social post a week, say just about financial literacy, then take the book. There was a post in the Mortgage Coach community group of all these different finance books. Pick one, and each week commit to, out of some of the pages you've read, what's one little nugget that you can share and call that Financial Literacy Friday. And you're just sharing a nugget where, you could diversify. The first Friday of the month is about savings. The second Friday of the month is about investing, whatever. That's all for the financial literacy side. Tuesdays, again, I'm going to say is TCA Tuesday. We have got to show people the art of how you are a true strategist when it comes to helping people manage their largest debt and asset. Kind of like Todd Ballinger always says, this is the one item that falls on both sides of the balance sheet. So how are you also leveraging not just the financial literacy that's on Fridays, but how you can leverage equity right now? So I would say for May, since this is the last week of April, I challenge you all to create, I would do a cost of waiting TCA. You could do that one today, go live. I still think the rent versus own, the move up or right size loan, as Jeremy would call it, whether they're moving up or moving down. And then make your theme that what you're constantly looking for is how can people leverage equity in a time like today, especially when inflation's never been as high. People who are on fixed incomes aren't making any more, but they're spending more. What are some financial tips you could give? Maybe they need to go back to old school and print out bank statements and start looking at and highlight, like, where's my money going? I was kind of chuckling about the gender differences with being able to save. And I'm like, well, then Target should not have existed, because I don't think I can get out of Target without spending $100. Men have it a lot easier with getting ready and what they wear, but it's true. I read another report of how the millennials and the younger generations, they're really having to sacrifice a lot of small luxuries because they do want to buy home. Those who do have that on their plan, they're having to cut some corners, and maybe doing a post about how did you know your parents can gift funds. And just, again, when you showcase the cost of waiting, that even if they can't picture themselves in a home for 30 years, because I think that's the other challenge is, some of these kids, they rent their clothes. So the thought of being committed to a 30-year mortgage, like, I have my own commitment issues. That
Okay.
sounds like, how do I get out of that? Like, at least when you rent, you think I have an easy way out. So it's just teaching, like Justin Brown. I don't know if you follow him, Kristin. He's a great one on TikTok. It's Loans by JB. He
Oh,
has
nice.
great financial, and especially for a man, I feel like sometimes women, they can be a little entertaining, or what could be kind of cheesy, and it's like acceptable. With men, sometimes they have a harder time. Justin Brown does an incredible job. It's engaging, it's very content rich, it's to the point, but he is also spreading his influence by being the go-to guy, that if you want creative, outside the box investing solutions, and maybe you don't have to keep this home. Like you bought in 2018. It's like, you don't have to feel like you're stuck with this commitment. You could rent it out, you could Airbnb, but it's going beyond just the cookie cutter FHA, conventional, jumbo, and getting people to just think differently. And that's that pattern interrupt, that when you get people to think, then you become memorable. So you've got to leverage. There's no easier way than using Lender Launchpad, which what I love about Lender Launchpad is it'll show your experience.com reviews. Like, let me tell you, that is you send that link and you've got your YouTube channel, your TCAs, and your reviews. Like I do the Wednesday webinars with Scott, and the traction that people are getting simply because of that word of mouth referral and validation, plus the strategy of you as the loan strategist on top of your YouTube vault. I mean, y'all check out Lender Launchpad. It's a great one, but that would be my checklist. You've got to be financially literate so you can share content that is financially literate. And then you've got to up your tech stack, which really compresses your time and allows you to build more revenue per client, because I believe 2/3 of your marketing department is actually your clients. They're the ones. It's very easy for them to share their experience now on social. And do you want them raving about you, going into Facebook groups and HOA pages and doing reviews saying how great you are? If your process isn't any different than every other loan officer, then you don't have a client experience. You don't have a brand, because people are willing to spend more for the brand, but you've got to have a different level of service and experience that's actually long-term value. That was a
Right.
lot.
Right. Yeah. Right on. So Todd, anything you want to ask Kristin before we run out of time, or do you want to add to this checklist?
But I think the checklist key. So I'm catching YouTube #1 and TikTok coming up, even though wasn't that high on the list for last September. It sounds like it's gaining steam. I like the idea, Dave, that you had of talking about these micro lessons. Deborah, you nailed a few there. You certainly have to start with yourself. What other micro lessons, Kristin, have you seen that you think every loan officer should be talking about?
I love what Deborah was getting into about just taking really small, like you can take a book that's about like Rich Dad Poor Dad or something like that, and just share a little bit about that on social media. But one thing I would say is that I do think that while TikTok to me is very interesting, it doesn't mean that's where you need to be spending your time. I think go wherever you can, wherever you feel comfortable, or wherever you feel like stretching yourself to share financial literacy content. So if that's, for me, I want to challenge myself to be more active on Facebook and Instagram stories, sharing that type of content, because that's easy for me, but it also scales, and I think that that would be an area I would just encourage people to do, is to take a little bit of that. The other thing is to consider your own, I think, background and your own money story, and I would encourage you to encourage others to do the same, because as we think about how we have grown up, or how we like a lot of our experiences or perceptions about money are ingrained in us by the time we're age of 7, they say. So I think just thinking about how you grew up and encouraging others to really understand their emotions around money, it can actually have a big impact, in addition to all of the things we've been talking about around financial literacy and really personalizing that experience.
I just want to add to that, not to forget about your partners, that you're only as good as your team and your real estate agents who, yes, they may follow you on social and they need the same literacy. I believe in getting back to face-to-face, have masterminds, host them every single month. That's another thing that I love that Denise and Dan both do, is they have events where it's more for the consumer, where you're talking about just your overall financial house. and let's take a look at, is your house in order? And then also doing events for your agents where they are learning the strategies that you provide. Again, a perfect example is that one that Denise shared, where she literally I was actually at that mastermind. She prints off 3 different TCAs, nothing fancy, on a piece of paper, and she starts every real estate meeting that she does just teaching them the differences, so that if the client ever goes to the agent asking for advice, which sometimes they will because you're the loan officer, they think you're trying to sell them a loan. It's important that you guys are all on that financial bus going the same direction at the same speed. And if you're wanting to learn more about this yourself, then don't forget, there's it's June 8th, right? Todd and Dave, Modern Mortgage Summit, Modern Real Estate Summit. That's a great way you guys could learn from the best of how they're leveraging and creating financial literacy. You take action, pay for a ticket, and go and learn so that you can show up online just like they do.
So yeah, modernmortgagesummit.com. Check it out, guys. It's going to be an incredible event. I think we've already sold over 5,000 tickets, and it will be a great example of modern mortgage professionals. And part of the criteria of being a modern mortgage professional is you're an advisor. You do financial literacy training, and education is part of your competitive advantage. So Kristin, we're almost out of time. Anything you wanted to make sure you got to share or cover before we run out of time here?
Yeah, I just want to share that at experience.com, we are releasing our top performers this week, and into next week, we'll be sharing a lot about that. I'm interviewing all of our top performers on what their top strategies have been to build a great customer experience. So I'd love to, I know I'll be back soon with Dave, I think, on a maybe Friday call to talk about what those top strategies are. So really excited to share that with you soon. But keep an eye on social media for that.
And just to be clear, because I want to put context what she said, these are out of all of your users. And how many users do you guys have, that are collecting? Just ballpark it.
Oh gosh, I
over 30,000
that information, but
let's just say it's over 30,000 loan officers. And these are their customer satisfaction scores, right? And you guys are going through and you're analyzing. And in the past, you've always done, who are the top 10, who's number 1, who are the top 100, what are the categories you're going to have this year?
Yeah, so we'll do the top 10 loan officers, and then we'll have a different category for large, medium, small, and jumbo on the company side. So very excited, mostly just around, again, creating that customer-centric experience and encouraging others to follow in that pursuit of building a great customer experience.
Well, keep an eye. We will have a call where we unpack what are the 3, 4, 5 things that the absolute best loan officers in the country at getting customer satisfaction scores. What are they doing? Todd, anything you want to wrap up, from a taking action standpoint on today's call or last question?
Yeah, we said we were going to talk about financial literacy and the digital shift. And as always, Kristin, you delivered the goods. And so I would encourage, when she shares her slides, learn from Kristin. She has great data. You already heard Deborah say that she feels immensely smarter when she stands in front of a room because she is talking about what she learned from Kristin's report. So thank you for that gift to us and our community. And then really think through, if you truly want to get out there and create the following and help people create a buying plan, right? Kristin said, use your story. So think about your story, right? We've had Renee Rodriguez on here plenty of times to talk about how to amplify it, right? And through his methodology. And it's just a great opportunity, I think, just to get better with your ability to help people feel comfortable with now what we know is a really stressful situation, especially with where rates are. And, you're all the best. You're part of this community. So take action, spend some time studying it, and then get out there and change the world one borrower at a time.
All right, guys. And remember, this is the last Tuesday of April. So it's the last Mortgage Coach sales meeting with Jeremy Forcier at 11. I may keep going forward with this because we've had so many views on those sales meetings. We've had so much great feedback. So I'm deciding if we're going to keep that sales meeting going. Let us know in chat if you want us to, and check it out. Go in the Mortgage Coach Facebook group and you can sign up for that today. So Kristin, thank you so much. You were amazing. Deborah, as always, it's good to have you here, and thank you for your role. This call is a wrap, everybody. Give us a like down below if you got some value, and share it with your mortgage friends. Take care, everybody.
All right. See you
Thank
guys.
you.